Hey guys, it is December 2nd, 2025 here with your after hours recap. Let's just keep it short and sweet today. A few moves that I did. FSLR, similar to MBIS yesterday, it gapped down on me just a touch. I knew that 260 was my stop going into the position yesterday. You know, we gapped down right into the support gap, similar to NBIS. And then I told myself I would let the first 5-minute bar play out, and then I would use that low as my stop effectively. So 5-minute opening range break low, I would be getting out of FSLR. All it did was just kind of hang out all day long. So nothing really for me to do in that regard, but wait for it until tomorrow. And that is exactly what I plan on doing, just letting it work until tomorrow. NEE is another one that I have. Again, my stop was the 20 simple moving average. We just held that perfectly. The other name that I did end up cutting, and again, hindsight's a little bit of 2020. When we took out prior day low, I trimmed some off this morning, and then all of a sudden, you know, I had been in this thing for 4 days. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, you know, silver or a little bit of stalling action. The last thing I really want to do is, you know, watch something come down to my average and then really break two lows, similar to what I saw happening in AEM. I did not want to get caught in an NEM and then have a green trade potentially go red. So when we got down to my average, I cut it, and then of course, you know, 620 setup, and then the rest is history. We just grinded higher all day. Again, hindsight's 2020. GFI was the other one that I was actually watching to get back into, and this one was actually really nice once you did reclaim the 50 simple moving average. Almost put it back on as well, but I just kind of left them alone after the fact. But again, hindsight's 2020. Had I known NEM was going to bounce perfectly, you know, right at my average, I would have kept it. But I was able to get a third trim off, teeny tiny winner. And really that's all there is to say there. I also tried Tesla as a long this morning as a reclaim of the 50 simple moving average. And boy, that did not work at all. That lasted just a couple of minutes. And then ultimately we ended up failing. Effectively, I trimmed NEM to cover my loss in Tesla. So between my NEM trade and then my loss in Tesla, that's effectively a scratch. So a little bit frustrating, but it is what it is. Caterpillar is one that I just held in. Really, really nice push today into the close. That is exactly what I was hoping to see. We effectively hit right at the all-time closing high, right at the close, and this thing looks pretty damn fantastic going into potentially tomorrow. And then it was just kind of a mixed bag. You know, on one end, you've got ASML acting like an absolute leader, acting fantastic. And then on the flip side, you get ALAB just trying to reclaim the 50 simple moving average and then getting the absolute colonoscopy. Yes, we come right into a support gap and we bounce a little bit. I think that that's fine, but this is just disgusting, disgusting price action. No matter what way you cut the cake. There are some stocks, obviously, that continue to act well. AMKR being one of those. This is just amazing action. And then on the flip side, you get something like ALAB, or you get what looks to be, you know, CIFR, reminding me a lot of where you get beaten up, you get a multi-day rally, and then all of a sudden you start to roll over. Reminds me a lot of TSSI. I brought this up quite a bit, right? You get beaten up, you start to rally, you cannot go make new highs, and then eventually you begin to roll over. CIFR has that same kind of feel here where you get beaten up, you start to rally, and then eventually you just roll over tomorrow, maybe losing the 50 simple moving average, something like that. And IREN, just horrible, horrible price action. I continue to be short from the 50 simple moving average, so there's really not much for me to do here, but just let it work. The quantums continue to be weak. Just look at a Rigetti. This just looks like another bear flag setup for a move down to the 200 simple moving average. Feels like that could be what is coming for some of these names. You know, the market has been pretty nice since not last Friday, the Friday before that. We have just been on a really, really nice rally over the last handful of days, almost V-shape recovering. And then some stocks, obviously, you got to give them credit, CRDO being one of those. But again, you get right into these highs, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's just a little bit of a rejection at the left side peak. And then on the flip side of that, you get something like Intel with absolutely no news, just ripping, up 8% today, if I'm not mistaken. So that's awesome. Obviously, this Intel did have a bit of a downtrend line break, and last Wednesday would have been the day to get involved. But really, if you weren't prepared for this thing on Wednesday, then it just is what it is. But obviously a really nice move, and I will continue to keep this thing on watch to see if we're going to kind of reject that left side peak. But ultimately, if you were in from lower, very nice job, trim and trail. I mean, can you really ask for a whole lot more than that? I don't think so. The healthcare stocks, if you look at the XLV, a little bit of a pullback multi-day. We talked about that a little bit yesterday, and I mentioned it as well. And then you've got a PPH, again, same thing, just following right along with the XLV. You've got the IHI, which is deals with medical devices, slight little bit of a pullback, and just everywhere you looked within, the biotech sector, even if you looked at XBI, same deal, little bit of a pullback. Not that these aren't in beautiful uptrends, but you can't go up every single day. Little bit of an unfilled gap here to the upside. So, that's not necessarily the best. But also not really that big a deal so long as you're above the rising 20 and the rising 50. A little bit of, profit taking in these sectors. So not that big a deal. Eli probably coming right back into the 20 over the next day or two. Johnson & Johnson, MDT, GH, GRAL, you name them. They're all doing the exact same thing. Again, where's money going? Where's money leaving? For the most part, all of these stocks are in uptrends, but they have made such big moves over the last few weeks, right? You look at the XBI, you have made such a big move since the April lows. A little bit of digesting here is completely healthy and totally normal. So where do we go from here? The reality is it still seems like the metals are leading. It still seems like when I look at the XLE ETF, that maybe this one could be trying to, when you look at the weekly, it's got such a big base, it makes me think like, boy, when this thing breaks out, if it ever breaks out, the energy sector could be absolutely fantastic. But again, I don't want to anticipate a breakout. I want to react to a breakout. That's kind of always my thinking. I don't want to assume something's got to happen. It's just got to happen. I got to give a little bit of credit to Ethereum today. That is the other thing that was on my mind. This thing was up, I want to say, what was this, 8% today? I think even a little bit more. Bitcoin, another one, just up very nicely. Yesterday, it looked like you were rolling over, and then today you get that entire move back. That is really nice to see, up 7%. So technically, we have built a higher low here, and effectively almost a higher high as well, since where we kind of rolled over from the highs on November 28th, excuse me. So that will be interesting to see how we can continue to develop here. Obviously closing over the 20 simple moving average, that's a start. We are a bit beaten up on Bitcoin. You're quite extended already from the 200 simple moving average. So a little bit of, of a rally back into the 50-day potentially, and then we see where we go from there. There has been some strength in MSTR, and I have to give MSTR a little bit of credit. You get this nice pickup in volume yesterday, which is effectively the biggest volume of the rally. And it's funny because you get all this pushback on social media of, oh, well, you're awfully quiet today. Like, guys, for one, I don't have a position, so I could care less. But two, I was talking about MSTR topping in July. And you could have avoided yourself a hell of a lot of headache had you not touched it underneath the 200 simple moving average. But all of a sudden, this thing goes up for 2 days, and the bulls come out of the woodworks. The Michael Saylor, attacking because it's going up for 2 days, and you're so wrong for talking crap about this stock. Guys, it's still down like 60% in like no time at all. So yeah, it's a piece of shit. It just is what it is. And don't attack somebody who's been completely right about this name since July. If you go back and look at the post, I was comparing it to its run in 2021. It ended up working out flawlessly to the T. So it just is what it is. But of course, people hate, trying to catch a falling knife a gazillion times, cutting themselves up a million different ways. That finally, when you get a little 2-day squirt higher, everybody comes out the woodworks and tells you, how stupid you are for talking crap about it yesterday. So, a little bit of a kind of comedy to make my day. Retail stocks, VSCO continues to be fantastic, even despite this little bit of a pullback. AEO gapping up on earnings just continues to be awesome. We are now at 23 bucks, so we are gapping up quite a bit in after hours. Home builders, I didn't think did anything special today. XHB, not too much of anything today, just a little bit of an inside day, which is A-OK after this move up off the lows. And the KRE, which is regional banks, I don't think it's doing too much of anything wrong here. Back up above all key moving averages, exactly what you'd want to see. And we'll just continue to take it one day at a time. I think, Tesla reclaiming the 50-day would be pretty good. But the one thing that I mentioned is I don't necessarily want to see, and again, Tesla I thought bounced pretty well, but I don't really want to see these names rejecting the 50 simple moving average. I didn't want to see ALAB rejecting the 50 simple moving average like this. I don't want to see a BE potentially rejecting the 50 simple moving average tomorrow. I don't want to see I don't want to see Reddit, for instance, reject these highs and start to work its way down. Now, this one has earned itself a rest. I think that that's totally fine. But what I don't want to see is names across the board start to reject. But on the flip side of that, you've got such nice action in still some names like ASML. I think AMAT was acting absolutely fantastic today, closed right at highs. So there are other semiconductors, MPWR, another one that's trying to get back above the 50, a KLAC right above the 50, MU bounced right at the 50. So there's still some really good action out there. You just have to be a little bit more selective. I think that that's totally fine. We should always try and be a little bit more selective. GEV is another name that comes to mind today. Really, really nice action. Reclaim of the 50 simple moving average, kind of bumping its head against this downtrend line. We'll see if this thing can kind of break through, build out. That's kind of more my style here at the moment. I'm not going to nail a bunch of entries, but it continues to build higher low, higher low, higher low. Kind of the way I view this is, there might be a low, here is another one, and then here is another one. So that is exactly what we want to see. And every time, it continues to find buyers at a new higher spot. That is awesome. And hopefully this name, after a really, really big move, could get moving here. That would hopefully be helpful for my NNE, which has done a really nice job building out a base. And then hopefully that would be helpful for the XLU ETF, which did not do a whole bunch of anything today. CEG is another name I'm also keeping on the radar. Again, this one's got a little bit of supply that we got to churn through, but ultimately, if you're trying to live above the 50, nuclear still continues to be a theme. Clean energy continues to still be a theme. I think that is absolutely a name to focus on. And, you still have some so-so action out there. Again, with a Palantir, you go up multiple days in a row, you hit the declining 20, you sell off most of the day. It's not terrible, but it's not the best. Robinhood, similar story. You try to push out today, you're still below a flattening 50 simple moving average. So I don't want to think too much of it. It did trigger an undercut and rally yesterday at 120 bucks. So that's pretty nice to see. It did bounce right at that unfilled gap just a handful of days ago. So again, that is pretty nice to see. That's kind of the ideal action that you would be looking for in a Robinhood. We do have some supply overhead, which, over time you want to see it kind of slowly churn through, ideally back over the 50 simple moving average. AppLovin, another one, just, fantastic, but comes right into that November 10th high, and then just a slight little reject. Nothing terrible, right? You go up multiple days in a row, and this one also triggered an undercut and reclaim on November 24th, also on the 25th. And then you just rally really, really nicely from, that 550 level, call it. And that's nice. That's exactly what you want to see. Some names continue to be absolutely awesome. Others, not so much, and the market is kind of showing you which names to avoid, right? Like, I'm not personally looking, and this is a name I'm short, I wouldn't be looking for the bottom on Rigetti until, of course, if you were long bias, let it show some strength and then let it tighten up, right? That's the best way, I think, to get involved into some of this stuff. And for right now, again, if Apple is going on to make brand new highs, can we really be too negative? If Google is just digesting some of its most recent gains after going bananas, right? Can we be too negative here, right? Microsoft bounced off the 200 a few days ago. Can we be super negative? Yeah. Okay, it's still below the declining 50. That's not the best, but we are holding on to the 200. Amazon being the other one, held on to the 200. Again, today, maybe not the prettiest action in some individual stocks. Like I said, healthcare continues to pull back just a little bit. Home builders didn't do too much. Airlines are actually starting to look a whole lot better. AAL, UAL, WYNN for the casino name looks pretty damn good here. BKNGBooking.com, trying to come back. EXPE, hanging out near highs, just fantastic. So the travel stocks, doing well, and money's going to other places. That is kind of the hallmark of a bull market. Don't fall in love with the stocks that have tons of overhead supply, right? Don't fall in love with a stock like, for instance, IREN that just rolls over below the 50 simple moving average. That's not necessarily what you want to see. Again, don't take my word for it. I'm short the stock, so I've got interest in watching it go lower. But ultimately, if you're bullish, that is not the action that you want to see, nor should you be hunting for the low on a stock that is showing a lack of momentum. So that's just kind of my thinking for the time being. Again, I was thinking I'd keep this short and sweet, but they always last a little bit longer. Hopefully you guys all had a pretty awesome trading day today. A little mistake on my end, getting rid of NEM a little bit too preemptively. And then, we'll just kind of go ahead and leave the names that I have on with NNE and FSLR. I'll continue to be patient with those until those break below my key spots. And I will be trying to get re-engaged on the long side, but on the opposite side of that thinking, does the market backfill some of this most recent move when you look at your S&P 500, right? This is just sloppy action. There's nothing tight about this price action. In fact, it's just wide and loose, and this is not really what you want to see in terms for brand new longs here. Wide and loose price action is never the best, and that's kind of exactly what we've got going on with an S&P 500, with the NASDAQ, with the IWM. So again, we'll just continue to take it one day at a time, as we always do. We'll try to get ourselves positioned on the long side, and we'll let things work if they are working. So anyway, I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow. Cheers.